What is the deal with those supplements and peptides and all these expensive health hacks out there? Am I just making expensive urine? Am I wasting my money? Like, what the heck is the deal going on? Well, you may or may not be making expensive urine because if you take a whole bunch of supplements and your gut isn't healthy and you can't absorb them, well, you may just be peeing or pooping them out. Like that's for real. You may be making expensive urine. So, in order to be able to take full advantage of the supplements you're taking, you need to get a healthy gut. And a healthy gut is a big, big topic. One of those topics that I discuss in my book, Preventable. I have, I don't know, 3 or 4 chapters on gut health. So it's something I'm not going to really dive into too much on this podcast because there's so much in there. But it is really important to pay attention to that because supplements can be expensive. I'm going to tell you, like for me, I take a whole bunch of supplements from a whole bunch of companies. I have kind of my tried and true sort of go-to company that has a few of my favorite things, like my powerful multivitamin and a couple other things, some probiotics and things that I love from this particular company. But I use supplements from literally a dozen companies because there's so many different needs we have, and I think about it as part of my food or nutritional budget. So I feel like I'm willing to invest in my nutrition, and supplements are part of that. It's simply part of my food budget, my nutritional budget. And so, yeah, I personally spend several $100s a month just on supplements because it's that important to me. There are some key ones that I'm going to hit on today that I think are really important. But before we get into that, let me just share a couple things that we should just keep in mind in general. Somebody asked me about this. Like, I think the question specifically was about iron supplementation, and we'll talk more about that. But if you're not absorbing the supplements you're taking, then they're not going to be of great benefit. So, for example, there's some important vitamins out there, the so-called fat-soluble vitamins, just for a quick example, like D, A, E, K. These are all important vitamins. My favorite of those probably is vitamin D. Many of you know I love to get vitamin D, mostly from the sunshine, but I actually do supplement. And for the winter months, probably about 6 months out of the year, I do supplement. And I recently did check under the hood, if you will, and had my labs drawn. And my vitamin D level, I was super pumped, was like 95. And I would recommend shooting for a level somewhere above 60. These were the levels that were shown to improve overall health, immune health, decrease inflammation, and things like that, especially during the winter time when we're exposed to a lot of illnesses, whether they be viruses like we had the pandemic and the SARS-CoV virus and all that stuff. Vitamin D really helps the immune system, and shooting for a level above 60 is really a good target because all the data that looked at that horrible pandemic and the folks that suffered greatly tended to have, just on average, not always, but on average, a lower vitamin D level. And those that had higher levels of vitamin D, and of course, those with less comorbidities, did much better. And so shooting for a vitamin D level between 60 and 100, I think is amazing. And I'm just proud to say that mine used to be decent. It was like 65, and now it's almost 100. It's about 95 now. So vitamin D is super important. But when you take it, vitamin D is fat soluble. And so you need to take it with other fat soluble things. Like I personally take mine at night, and I take it with my omega-3 because omega-3 is one of the most, I think, critical supplements. It's super important for brain health, for decreasing inflammation, for mental clarity, sharpness, and just overall a healthful state, both in body and mind. And it's one of my favorite omega-3s. And we don't often get enough in our diet. Like even the FDA and other bodies recommend that in order to try to get this from food, we got to eat fish like 3 times a week. And I don't do that when I'm not in Hawaii. When I am there, I made it 4 or 5 times a week, but I also had a case of mercury poisoning because I was eating too much fish, and my favorite sashimi and poke and all of this tended to have the big fish like ahi tuna, which tends to be a carnivorous fish and eat smaller fish. And so it has levels of mercury that build up. And so if you eat too much of that, like even I believe Tony Robbins had mercury poisoning. I think he used to eat tons and tons of canned tuna or lots of tuna back in the day to get his protein in, and he had a pretty bad case of mercury poisoning as well from too much fish. So I don't eat as much fish as I used to, and so I do supplement with an omega-3. But when I take that, I take it with other fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin D, as I mentioned, my personal favorite. And the omegas are great to take together if you like to do a little bit of olive oil, like a spoonful of olive oil, whatnot. Take them all together, the fat soluble vitamins together is amazing because that way you will actually absorb them. Otherwise, you may not be getting the full benefit and you may be just having some expensive excretions, right? Another important thing with supplements is how you store them, right? If you're going to be taking expensive probiotics like I do, I try to keep them either refrigerated or in a cool place. And it's super important because if you're spending lots and lots of money on probiotics and when you ingest them, they're already dead because these are live, right? These are live, helpful bacteria that can repopulate your gut and promote all kinds of amazing benefits. But if you take them and they're in a warm, hot place, like on the counter in Hawaii, for example, they may not be as effective. So, refrigeration, I think, is helpful for several of the supplements, like many probiotics, as the fish oils you don't want to put on a hot counter. Either they get rancid, and that is not good. And also, the forms of the vitamins that you get make a difference, right? Maybe you've heard of methylation. I did a whole podcast on methylation, gosh, maybe 2 years ago, maybe more, where there are certain forms of vitamin, the so-called bioavailable forms, tend to be absorbed more easily. Like, for example, if you're going to take vitamin B12 or cobalamin, it is helpful to take a methylated form like methylcobalamin, B12 that is methylated. Also, folic acid, which sadly many doctors still prescribe, not the most bioavailable form of folate, right? We want a folate as the folates our body tends to have in them, which is a methylated version of folate. So I take one that has alpha methylfolate. So a methylated folate, for example, is more bioavailable, useful than just a folic acid. It will be less likely to just excrete the thing and be wasting my money. So methylated vitamin, especially the B vitamins like the folate, the methylfolate, not the folic acid, as well as the B vitamin like B12. Very helpful to have it methylated because that's the form in the body that is most useful, that is well absorbed, and it is so-called bioavailable. It's ready to do its job. So choose the right form of the vitamin. The storage, as we talked about, have a healthy gut to be able to absorb them because it's not just the vitamins, nutrients, supplements, or even the amazing food that you eat. It's what you absorb that matters, what you absorb. And what's super interesting, and I'll just quickly send a little quick message about all the noise you've been hearing on social media and other places about peptides, right? We've been hearing about peptides left and right, and there's companies popping up here and there. They're saying, oh, we have the best peptide blends and this and that. And honestly, these are, generally speaking, from the ones that I've seen and looked at, they tend to be oral peptides. And peptides are just small proteins, right? They're usually 50 or less amino acids. The most famous peptide of all times that were well known, I should say, it's over 100 years old, discovered in the early 1900s, was insulin, which I'm so grateful for because two of my kids have to be on insulin or they die. Like, it's that important. We need that. And so I have two kids that have to take insulin because their liver is not producing it, because of the type 1 diabetes scenario that they have, or I should say the pancreas is not producing it, the beta cells of the pancreas. And so they are taking insulin. And so it's literally saving their life on a daily basis. So I'm very grateful for insulin. But what's very interesting is we are over 100 years after it was first used to help folks with diabetes. It's been in use for over 100 years, and still the most effective form of insulin is injectable. My kids have to take injectable insulin to be able to appropriately manage their blood sugar. And they've been researching this for decades, if not 100 years, how they can make an oral available insulin. And they're getting close, actually. And it's pretty crazy, all the different techniques that have to be done to make an oral peptide useful and absorbable and bioavailable. And it's literally something that takes years of investigation, probably billions of dollars. And so any supplement company that pops up here and there that's professing to have these amazing bioavailable oral peptides, I would just have a little bit of caution and some healthy um, skepticism about it, because that's just not what the literature shows. That's not what the research shows. It's actually really difficult to come up with an oral peptide that is very highly bioavailable. In fact, more than 90% of the peptides that are taken in the oral form, the availability is much less than 10%. So what's the reason for that? Well, it's simple. It's called digestion, right? A peptide is just a small protein. You put it in your mouth, swallow it, goes into your stomach. What happens in your stomach? Well, you have a very low pH or acidic pH, which activates enzymes that break down proteins, right, into their subsequent smaller versions called amino acids. And these very potent enzymes like trypsin, chymotrypsin, pepsin, they literally, as their main job, they break down proteins. And so anything that you eat when it's in the stomach and also small intestine, it's going to be exposed to these very potent enzymes, which basically chew up the peptides, chew up the proteins, and they make them into these teeny tiny amino acids, which is the building block of everything. And so you thought that you had a specific peptide you were taking for a specific thing, and by the time it goes through your stomach and then small intestines, whether or not it gets absorbed at all, it's not going to be in the form that it used to be in if you're just taking a simple oral peptide. It's not going to be it. It's going to be broken down into subsequent amino acids, and so it's not going to generally have the same effect. And then also, just to be able to get absorbed, a peptide is very challenging to get absorbed if it doesn't have other carrier properties. Like literally, they are making crazy high-tech solutions with nanoparticles and these, it's kind of like almost like a micro robot that attaches to certain peptides and it unfolds once it gets into the intestine, and then it sticks to the intestinal lumen or the lining and injects itself. Like these are super high-tech nanotechnology stuff, which I'm pretty much guaranteeing that none of these supplement companies are using anything like that. And I'm not saying they should either, but that's the way to make an oral peptide bioavailable, because most of them will just turn out to be digested just like food. So it's going to be not super likely that they're going to be highly efficacious. And if you think of all of the very effective peptides in the last 100 years, the overwhelming majority of them all have been injectable peptides, unless they've had a specific technology used to be able to make them more bioavailable and to be absorbed in your gut, so to speak. And it's very hard to do. I mean, think of the biggest selling peptides outside of insulin in the last decade. They've been all the glutides, right? The semaglutides, all the ones that were initially used for diabetes, right? Now, like Ozempic and all the others, now they're being used for weight loss and all these kind of other sort of off-label uses for the most part. I don't want to get into that. In this episode, I actually did at least 2 podcasts on the GLP-1 agonists, if you will, like Ozempic. And I don't want to get into the details in this one, but I will say that guess what? Big surprise, these peptides are used in an injectable form, right? That's not a pill that you swallow, it's an injectable form. And there's a reason for that, because they work. They're much more effective. They get into the bloodstream. And when you just eat an oral peptide, swallow it, it's going to be much less likely to be efficacious. And that's just what the data shows. This is not anti-peptides. In fact, I love peptides. Like I said, peptides are what keeps my kids alive. There's also some amazing peptides out there that support healing and just amazing stuff that I actually shared in my peptide podcast. So if you haven't listened to that, go back, re-listen to it. Some great info on peptides. I did a couple on the GLP-1s like Ozempic, Mounjaro, those as well. And if you want more information on that. But I want to get back into these supplements and what the heck is going on with them. Are we just excreting them or peeing them out, whatever, wasting our money? And one of the questions I got in DMs was specifically about iron supplementation. And there's so many types of iron out there. So I can't get too into it because there's so many choices. But what I will say is that it does matter which type you take, because they're all not equally absorbed. And personally, I love to go with food first. That's always my number one option, is food first. So like a lean protein source, if you're open to eating meats, there's much more bioavailable heme or iron in meat, because it's like us. We recognize it. We have meat, right? We have muscle, we have our heme, we understand the body recognizes the iron in different meats, whether it be red meat or others that have iron in them, and that's going to be much better absorbed than just taking a supplement. But if you do need to supplement, because many people, in fact, worldwide, still probably the most common nutrient deficiency worldwide is still iron deficiency. Super, super common. If you think you might have it, just check under the hood. Ask your doctor or healthcare provider to do a few tests, like a CBC, which is a blood count. You also want to get some iron levels, like ferritin levels, for example. You want to check under the hood to see if you might benefit from additional iron in your diet or in supplementation. Because if you're feeling tired all the time, just low energy, maybe you get winded easily, maybe you get sick more often, maybe you have a headaches, heart palpitations, pale skin. There's a lot of different stuff, even hair loss. A lot of these are signs of iron deficiency, and it is super, super common, especially in women that still have their periods, right? That are still menstruating, because they lose a decent amount of iron once a month when they're menstruating. So iron deficiency is super common, and it is treatable, and there are many, many available options. I like to go with food first, but there's also a bunch of different supplement forms, whether it be the old school ferrous sulfate, there's ferrous gluconate, there's ferrous bisglycinate, ferrous biglycinate. There's so many options, and I would say talk with your healthcare provider, dietitian about the specifics, because one type may be better for you, but typically you're going to want to take it with food so it can be more bioavailable. If you can get one that also has vitamin C actually increases the absorption of iron. And if you do tend to have iron supplements, make sure you keep them out of reach of children. Like I remember from the early days of my medical training 25 years ago, one of the gnarliest toxidromes or toxin induced conditions that I saw in kids was when they got into their parents' iron supplements, and they took a buttload of iron, like literally that can kill a kid. So if you have iron supplements around, make sure they're out of reach of children, make sure they have those childproof locking lids and things like that. Personally, I don't have iron supplements in the house, even though I do have a wife who is menstruating, and she takes a multivitamin, which has a little bit of iron in it, but with her diet, which incorporates lots of healthy protein, including meats, her iron levels are great. She just had her blood work done, and she's not anemic, and I was super proud of her. Like, she's crushing it. Her biologic age was like over 10 years younger than her chronologic age. So it's amazing. She's like 30 biologically, which is crazy. She's, gosh, almost as old as I. She's like 46. And so amazing stuff. But you can get this stuff from diet. Food first is my mantra, but there's definitely a place for supplementation. And I'm going to just share with you briefly a couple of my sort of top 10. I'm not going to give you 10, but my top probably 2 or 3 supplements. And I'm going to just use my book as my guide, Preventable, because I wrote a whole chapter on this. And I just wanted to share a little bit, because there's this age-old question, to supplement or not to supplement. Like, what the heck? Am I just making expensive urine? Like, is it worth it? Well, here's the other thing. Don't use supplementation as an excuse or a reason to live less healthy. So no amount of supplementation is going to counteract or going to make less healthy lifestyle practices okay. So you don't supplement your way out of poor health choices. You know what I mean? Like, if you're a person that never wants to exercise ever, or doesn't want to eat healthy, wants to go get fast food every day, like, you can supplement, as they say, proverbially until the cows come home, and it's not going to be enough. It doesn't take the place of good, healthy lifestyle choices. It definitely augments, and it will definitely help, but you don't supplement your way out of really bad lifestyle choices. Okay, so that's number one. You should be incorporating the healthy habits that I detail out specifically in my book, Preventable, with respect to sleep and stress optimization and how to choose the best whole foods, how to get your gut healthy, right? All these important things should be first. Exercise, one of the pivotal, I think, pillars of all health. Get out and move your body. Simple stuff like just take a walk every day. Like, the benefits are unreal and so simple, so simple. But there is a need for some supplements. In fact, Dr. Linus Pauling, you probably heard of him. He was into vitamin C. He was one of the most renowned, gosh, early Nobel Prize winners, two-time Nobel Prize winner. And he said you can trace every sickness, every disease, and every ailment to a mineral deficiency of some kind. Linus Pauling, two-time Nobel Prize winner. And so in a perfect world, raising perfectly awesome, healthy, both plant and animal products in the way that we used to back in the day, the best regenerative techniques, all wild and grass-fed and pasture raised, and just free range animals, as well as having the best soil for our plants, veggies, and fruits, we probably wouldn't need a lot of supplementation. But right now, present day 2025, our soils are not what they used to be. They are depleted in many ways of the common important minerals like magnesium, for example, and less nutritious than they once were. I remember a study from the 1980s, and it was looking at the nutrient quality of some really well-known fruits and vegetables, things like oranges, and comparing them to the nutrient quality of these same fruits and vegetables 50 years prior. And big surprise, they had less nutrient density, the current ones, than the ones of 50 years previous, because the soils are just so depleted. Our farming practices are not amazing because they're considering just volume and mass production and tip of the iceberg stuff like GMO and whatever else. They're spraying the crap out of them with pesticides and things like that. And they're just not as nutrient rich as they used to be. So nowadays, there's actually more of a need for supplementation than there used to be. But in a perfect world, without pollution, without stress, without chemical exposures from pesticides, herbicides, plastics, or EMFs, with perfectly natural foods grown from the richest soils, supplementation would likely not be necessary. That's how my chapter starts on supplementation. I agree with that, and that's um, it's been shown. And in fact, this has been well known from even almost 100 years ago. 1936, there was a doctor by the name of Charles Northern who recognized that the soils were becoming depleted. And he brought this up to a Senate hearing way back in the 1936. Crazy. He was saying, hey, look, guys, we got to get the soils back to how they used to be. We got to get them nutrient rich. We got to use the best techniques, which is regenerative agriculture. He was saying this way back in the 1930s. And only now it seems like we're starting to talk about this again. Dr. Mark Hyman has been really great with sharing this important message of how we need to practice regenerative agriculture. And I think possibly there may be more benefits out there to farmers who will practice this technique, and hopefully subsidies so that it'll become more common, because there are farmers doing it, but it's not the norm, sadly. But he said, healthy people come from healthy food, which comes from healthy soil. Dr. Charles Northern, way back 1936. So it's really important that we pay attention to this, because nowadays we can be lacking in many senses with respect to our environment not having the nutrients in the soil that it used to. And so one of the favorite quotes that I love that Mark Hyman shared, he says, even with the perfect diet, the combination of many things, including our depleted soil, see, he's familiar with Charles Northern's work, the storage and transportation of our food, genetic alterations, that's the GMO stuff, of traditional heirloom species, and the increased stress and nutritional demands resulting from a toxic environment make it impossible for us to get the vitamins and minerals we need solely from the foods we eat. Dr. Mark Hyman, really, really, really intuitive, and I just think important statement about the need for supplementation in the year 1919. What the heck? Where's my brain going? In the year 2025. So into the 1930s just a moment ago, but in the year 2025, we absolutely need some supplementation. So I'm going to quickly share with you just a couple of items that I think are the biggest bang for your buck. Are you ready? All right. So I just want to share a couple of things because there are some gaps. There are some gaps. And so the food first mentality is what I always like to start with, and then fill in the gaps with supplementation. And as I mentioned at the outset, we got to get our gut healthy so we can absorb the stuff that we're purchasing. I literally spend hundreds of dollars each and every month on supplements. And so my first most important regimen is actually my gut health regimen. And that's the one that I don't deviate from. It has probiotics, it has a little bit of a cleanse and a magnesium product that helps make sure I'm pooping once or twice a day, each and every day, just keeping everything real regular and flowing and moving, because not a lot of people talk about that, but it's actually really important to eliminate. If you're not eliminating or pooping at least once a day, you could benefit from a better gut health regimen. I'm just saying that the data actually shows that. And it's fiber is the tip of the iceberg. It's important, but it's not everything. And if you need to know a little bit more about that, grab the book, read the chapters on gut health, ask me about what my gut health regimen looks like. Feel free to message me, email me, whatever. I'm happy to share what I use because it works. Number one, I've been taking a certain gut health regimen for about 10 years now, and I wouldn't go back because I feel amazing. My biologic age is nearly 2 decades younger than my chronologic age. I'm in my 30s biologically and in my 50s chronologically. So why would I go back? Like people ask, well, are you going to take that stuff forever? Or do you get addicted to it or dependent upon it? Or I don't want to take anything that I might be, addicted to or dependent upon. It's like, are you kidding me? I want to be addicted to amazing health. Like I want to feel amazing. And why would I stop using certain supplements and things that help me feel amazing because I don't want to be addicted? Like this is crazy. It's crazy. I mean, I use the food first mantra, of course, but there are supplements I just wouldn't want to go without because they contribute and enhance my health to a degree that, I mean, at 50, and I'm entering my 52nd year this year in just about 2 months. And I feel as good as I did in my 20s. Like, honest to goodness truth, I have 4 healthy, vibrant teenagers, and I can keep up with all of them in any sport, in any weightlifting, in any, challenging physical endeavor. And I'm in my 50s. Like, it's doable. And that's why I'm passionate about this because I know it is possible. I know it is doable. I can help you with this. And I'm so pumped because I'm just a couple of weeks away from launching a brand new program where you can turn back your biologic age by 10 to 20 years. So stay tuned. That's coming real soon. And that's something I'm so passionate about because who wouldn't want to feel better, right? Who wouldn't want to have that energy, that vitality that they had maybe in their 20s and feel that vibrant in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and beyond? And I'm here to tell you that it is possible. And one of the things that is useful is some supplementation. So I'm just going to just unpack briefly my favorite supplements. And the first one starts with a multivitamin, like so simple. And I have one that I really love because, as at the outset I shared with you, it has bioavailable nutrients like methylated folate, like methylated cobalamin, right? Because there's these things that make some of us less likely to absorb certain nutrients if we have issues with the MTHFR gene. There's these things called SNPs, single nucleotide. They basically have sequences that you get little deletions and you don't process the nutrients as easily. Single nucleotide polymorphism, so-called SNPs. And you can get tested for this. There's an MTHFR testing panel that you can get from your provider and see if you're more susceptible. But those folks especially need to make sure their vitamins, especially folate, for example, is a methylated form, methylfolate, which is the bioavailable form. So I take a vitamin that is methylated. It is amazing. It's great for hair and nails and all the basics of nutritional support. It has things like zinc and selenium and iron and just so many amazing things. And it is bioavailable. It has B12 as well. So there's folks out there that are vegans, which is just fine if that's serving you and you are thriving. Keep up the good work. I just think it's a challenging way to live because there are some areas where you will need some support. And one of them is with the vitamin B12 or cobalamin. And so this vitamin actually has a methylated form of B12. And it's been very well known in the vegan communities that B12 deficiency is more common because you just can't get it from plants. This doesn't really happen in that arena very much. There's some algae you can eat and so on, but it's really, really hard. And so supplementation is pretty crucial. And so this vitamin I take, it's a methylated cobalamin, vitamin B12. Super important. So I would say that choose your multivitamin wisely. Look at the label, make sure it has methylfolate, make sure it has methylated cobalamin or vitamin B12, because otherwise you may just be paying for expensive urine, right? It's just one of those things. And I would also make sure it has important other vitamins like vitamin D and K, like we talked about. K2 is the one that helps with strong bones, for example. Um, and it's just something you got to look at the label. You got to read it. You simply got to read it. Make sure, obviously, it comes from a good, well-sourced area. It's not just imported from China or something like quality matters. I'm just going to say quality matters. You do generally get what you pay for. And just because it's on the shelf at one of the famous vitamin shops that are around, there's so many of them out there, doesn't mean that it's amazing stuff. Make sure it's got the best forms, the bioavailable forms with methylated folate, methylated B12, for example. My other favorite, I talked about this briefly, vitamin D. Oh my gosh, critical. Make sure you're getting enough vitamin D. All of the health reasons I explained before, as well as having a healthy immune system. It's good for your brain. It's good for anti-inflammatory properties. Obviously, it's good for the bones too, but D3, vitamin D3, K2, super important stuff. And make sure you take it with other fat soluble vitamins so you can absorb the stuff so it doesn't just get wasted. And there's a recent study looking at just folks here in the developed world, and more than 50%, I would say it's probably higher than that. This was done in the US, had insufficient levels of vitamin D. And those of us that live farther to the north, like Canada, even more need to pay attention to their vitamin D levels, right? Because they're not getting as much sunshine and not being able to produce it naturally in their skin cells. Vitamin D is so critical, crucial for brain health, for bone health, for immune health, and just for feeling amazing. It actually affects mood even. Like vitamin D levels have been correlated with mood. And like I said, during the pandemic, those that had higher vitamin D levels did better. And another study which came out of the journal Pediatrics reported that up to 70%, 70% of kids can be low in vitamin D. And this is crazy scary because they're growing, they need to produce healthy bones. And if they aren't getting appropriate vitamin D, like that could be a nightmare. So I actually have my kids taking vitamin D, D3K2 supplements. I just think it's that critical. Literally, it's important for hundreds of reactions in the body, and you often will need it from an additional source like supplementation. It's hard to get enough of it from the diet and from sunshine unless you're in a place like Florida where it's beautiful and sunny like pretty much every day of the year. But the only way you know is you got to check. You got to check under the hood, right? Check your 25 hydroxy vitamin D level. And the good news is if it's low, I would say anything lower than 60, you got room to improve, right? And if you start taking a supplement, D3K2, for example, you can literally see benefits within a couple of months. Just in my own personal case, I had labs drawn last October, and my vitamin D level was in the 60s. And I was like, oh crap, I better pay attention to this. And I was in Utah at that time. And so we weren't getting a ton of sunshine. And so I started supplementing every night, taking it in the same handful as my vitamin A and D and K, as well as E and my omegas, all my fat soluble vitamins I was taking together. And I repeated this just a couple of months later in January. So like 3 months later. And literally my level was almost 100 just from additional supplementation and no additional sunshine because I was in the mountains of Utah in the winter, not getting much sunshine, maybe just on my face, the little bit of my face that the sun could hit, right? That wasn't covered by a helmet and goggles and the other scarves and things. So super important. And most of us will need additional vitamin D. It's that important, that critical. And in closing, I just want to share my favorite mineral. And this was something interestingly enough that just came up. It came up in a conversation with one of my kids at their elementary school. Like, I just think it's so cool that people are learning about this stuff at a younger age. And this is not anything here nor there, but it actually came up in their elementary school conversation. This is about my favorite mineral, the mighty mineral of magnesium. And the sad thing is, present day, the majority of us here in the US and in the developed world tend to be deficient or insufficient with respect to our magnesium intake. And you can get a level drawn. And I was so stoked my wife got hers done just last month. I encouraged her to also check under the hood to get all her labs done. And her magnesium level was freaking awesome. it was like 3.5 or something. I don't remember the exact number, but anything over about 2.5 is fantastic. Hers was like in the 3 range. And I was like, holy crap, you are crushing it. She absorbs this mineral very, very well. And it is critical for so many functions, like over 600 reactions in the body. Like legit, magnesium is that important. It even helps you to absorb vitamin D better. Who knew, right? Magnesium, so critically important. Magnesium, it's the super mineral. It's so important for energy. Just that little thing, right? They call ATP, the adenosine triphosphate. That's the energy currency of our cells that gets us all fired up, gets us going. Like that can't be made, cannot be made without magnesium. Like it's that important. Over 600 reactions. And there was a recent report from the American Family Physician Medical Journal that suggested that up to 75% of us are not getting the recommended amount of magnesium in our diet. And it's cool. Like I said, my wife's levels were amazing. She takes the supplement from this same company that does my gut health regimen, and it's been working great for her. And I was super stoked because it's such a crucial mineral. Like it helps, even my kids, for example, take magnesium because it helps with diabetes as well. Like it literally helps with blood sugar management. Magnesium is the mighty mineral. If you want to know more about it, like legit, just listen to a podcast I did on nothing but magnesium. I think I called it the mighty mineral. And so important, so critical. I take it for so many reasons to keep my brain healthy, helps me sleep at night. It's my favorite. Magnesium for the win. Message me if you want to know what kind I take or the amounts and what times a day. I typically take it at night because I love it to help me get a little more restful sleep. And it has been a game changer in my life. And in conclusion, the last of my sort of favorite 5, I don't know if I've even hit 5, but is the omegas. And I shared briefly about the omegas at the outset because I talked about fish a little bit. So the omega 3s, which are EPA and DHA, super important. And from the Nutrition Journal, a study that came out of the US, they said Americans do not get enough of this in their diet. The omega 3s, specifically the EPA, which is eicosapentaenoic acid, and DHA, the docosahexaenoic acid, they're so important for brain health, for eye health, for so many things, for anti-inflammatory properties, for reducing brain health issues in the future, like dementia. In fact, I recommended to my mom to take a specific omega because I want to make sure her brain is as healthy as possible because she has a family history of some neurocognitive stuff. And so I want her to take what I take, right? Because the omegas are so critical, so useful. And in fact, I even sent her a bottle of the ones that I take because it's so useful. But omega 3s have also shown to be helpful with something very common like depression, anxiety, ADHD. Um, it improves joint health, skin health, immunity, sports performance. Like, why wouldn't you take it, right? And as I mentioned, you can get it from fish, and I used to get a bunch from fish, but I was also getting some mercury toxicity. So I have added an omega 3 to my regimen. I take it at night with my fat soluble vitamins, as I mentioned, because I don't want to miss out on this important brain health benefit, anti inflammatory benefit, the sports medicine benefits that I just shared. Like it's just so critical. And the overwhelming majority of us, like it shared in this Nutrition Journal article, are deficient or just not getting enough from our diet. They're not getting enough. And so in closure, I just want to share how awesome it is to know that supplementation can help you. But you want to make sure your gut is healthy, right? You want to prime the soil, make sure you can absorb the nutrients that you're taking in. So you don't just have expensive urine or expensive poop, and you want to actually be able to absorb it. So get the vitamins that are the most bioavailable, and these tend to be the ones that are methylated. These tend to be the ones that are liposomal. Like I take a liposomal vitamin C, for example. I didn't even get into vitamin C because I can't talk about everything every time. You can ask me about it. I might have done a podcast on it as well. But liposomal vitamin C, for example, is much more bioavailable. And make sure that your company or the companies you use well-sourced ingredients. If they can get them from real food, like the one I take actually for vitamin C, it's from real food. It's amazing. Like the camu berry, acai. There's so many good sources of vitamin C out there. And why wouldn't you want to take it from a natural, healthy food source? So sourcing is important. make sure they have a third party process which validates that what they say is in the bottle is actually in the bottle. Because as you know, the FDA does not regulate supplements. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I mean, the FDA is good for a lot of reasons, but they have their, they have their challenges, right? I think they're going to be overhauled completely, potentially in this next 4-year period. At least that's what I'm hearing about. But make sure you do your due diligence, do your own homework, right? Make sure these things are not coming in from China, that they use good manufacturing processes, that they're well sourced, right? That they actually have the bioavailable form. If you need help, grab my book, Preventable. It's got a lot of details that can help you. You can ask me what supplements I take. But I just wanted to share with you some of these valuable tools that I found that have gotten me to feeling great in my 52nd year of life. And supplementation is one of my favorite things because each and every day I have the opportunity to provide my body with the nutrients that it needs. And I don't want you to miss out on that either. So thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. Thank you. Sorry, a little mishap on my podcast. I have this whole stand here, and this I'm standing up. I don't know if you can tell that on YouTube or wherever, but I love to stand when I podcast because I get amped, I get energized. Standing is one of my favorite medicines. Standing, walking, just moving the body, and I just feel like I can connect with you. I can share my heart, and so thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. I appreciate it so much. And if you haven't, drop me a review. Please do that. Hop on over there right now. Click on that star farthest to the right on Apple. Right below that, there's a little box on the left that has like a pencil coming out the upper right. Write a review. I read every one, each and every one, whether it comes over there on Apple, Spotify, give me a thumbs up, whatever. Amazon, grab my book, Preventable, and drop a review. I read all of those things, and it just makes me grateful. I love you guys. I thank you for being here. I know you got busy, busy lives, but I hope this has provided a little bit of helpful and useful information that you can go out and share with a family member or friend. Share it out. Share the show. If you're enjoying anything, if you want to go back and re-listen to episodes, also message me. Tell me what you want to know about because this is what I love. I love to educate and share what has been helpful and useful to me and make sure you're taking advantage of this important, healthful information. So until next time, much love. Keep following along. I'm releasing a new product real soon. Can't wait to see you on a free webinar as well. Aloha, mahalo, and until next time.